Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today and Jody to our, I guess, my real estate monthly seminar. Today, I'm really honored and appreciative of Jody to join us. He is from City Lights Property Management in Guelph. I'm really happy that he's here with me today to talk about the Guelph rental market. Um, I am gonna get started. So tonight, the format of tonight's section, we are going to have. I've already made up some questions to discuss, and Jordi is gonna kind of share his expertise on those areas, and I'm gonna also share some insights as well. And hope once those questions are discussed, we will have time for your questions. So if you wanted to just use the share function, sorry, not the share function, the chat function on Zoom, you can do that as well, or send me a message on chat, or you can open your mic at the end of our discussion to ask questions. We'll be glad to answer questions. Because we do have very limited time today, unfortunately, I will not be translating everything, but if there's any questions that you would like me to ask Jody, and if you're more comfortable with Chinese, you can do so as well. So without further ado, I'm going to have maybe start with having Jody tell us a little bit about yourself and your company. Here to you,
All
Jody.
right. Thank you very much for the kind words and the intro, and thank you for having me, Esther. And welcome, everybody. I have been working in property management for about 10 years now in Guelph, and it has been an excellent business for me as a person who enjoys working with people and a person who enjoys investing. Guelph, in particular, I find is one of the best markets that I've been able to work with. I have worked in Toronto as well as Kitchener, Waterloo, and some of the surrounding areas. And I found Guelph to be one of the more lucrative markets and easier ones to deal with. In terms of my company, City Lights Property Management, we are more of a small time niche kind of mom and pop shop. So I really try to cater to my clients on a one-on-one basis. And for me, it's a little bit more important that I'm meeting my clients' needs versus turning over clients consistently. So it's something that City Lights Property Management takes as a proud thing as part of business.
Great.
And I'm happy to move on to the questions.
Yes, awesome. Okay. Well, if there's any more questions about your company down the road, as the question come along, we can add on to that as well.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, Esther had mentioned to talk about a bit of an overview of the Guelph rental market. And in terms of Guelph, there are many wide ranges of properties that are available. And I find that, you know, as long as you're comfortable with the rental game and the market and how things are done, I think Guelph is probably one of the easiest markets for people to get into, and then one of the easier markets for people to really grow a large portfolio. In terms of buying and selling for Guelph, there's always been some very good, I guess, business that's very consistent. And so it's not too hard to find properties to rent or properties that you can do, you know, small construction jobs to either turn them into a duplex or whatnot, which has been a very good thing for Guelph.
Now, now, Jody, can you add on a little bit about talking about? I know you talked about it's very easy to find rental or to find tenants. What
Mhm.
about vacancy in terms of type of vacancy? Have you seen any property vacant for a long period of time? Like in terms of vacancy rate?
Yeah, for me, I don't see vacancies very often. And the only time that I see a property go vacant, it is for obvious reasons, like the landlord is either unwilling to do, you know, certain repairs on the home, which it just
Mm,
doesn't show well quite often. But for the most, you know, the owner is, you know, reasonable about the market rent and not looking to overprice things. Then I think there's very, very little chance of vacancy. I think timing can obviously play a factor in that, and you know, the unknown can slow things down, and that's a possibility as we've experienced this past year with COVID.
mm-hmm.
But I think Guelph has a very strong rental market. There's a lot of job opportunities here, which attract a lot of people,
Hmm.
and just the communities in general. So I personally, I can think of maybe 3 properties in my many years that I had go vacant for unknown reasons, maybe a couple times. It doesn't
Wow.
happen often at all in Guelph.
Wow, that's great to hear. Okay,
Yeah.
so you talked about Guelph has a very strong rental market. If the landlord is reasonable with the rent, do the repairs, the things that they need to get the house fixed and show really well, they shouldn't be having any concern renting any property in Guelph.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think as a real estate agent, you probably find similar things when you're
Mhm.
showing a home, and if it shows really nicely,
Yeah.
it's more attractive to a lot more people.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. Yeah. So I want to say is that it's even for me as a landlord myself, with my own rental properties, I really haven't
Mhm.
had any trouble, having anything vacant.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
excellent.
Yeah, okay, awesome.因为今天晚上，sorry, I'm gonna jump into different language.
Yeah,
因为今
no
天晚上
problem.
时间比较有限，所以不可能所有的地方都要翻译。那现在就是我们有一些问题在讨论。如果我们当中有的人想要就这个问题有一些问答，有一些问题的话呢，可以用那个 chat 那个 function，或者可以把你的麦克风打开，然后打断就可以了。那么我们下一个的问题呢是，疫情对出租房有什么影响？So Jody, when we're going to move on to the next question, what are some of the impacts? So we've talked about how great the rental market is in Guelph, which I can personally testify to that as well. But what
Yeah.
about, I know some people are kind of really worried or getting concerned of if they are looking to buy additional investment properties, even with their current properties, just because of COVID,
Yes.
what are some of the things you have seen? Before you talk about your experience, I do want to share my own experience with helping my
Please.
clients find tenants. I
Mhm.
seriously haven't had any trouble finding tenants for my clients. So just for example, for 2 bedroom or basement apartment that I was renting, I posted on Kijiji and we had over 300 hits. And I would say roughly about in a short period of time, I think I probably had 20 participants, sorry, not participants, 20 people contact me to ask, wanting to see the property. So that's kind of what I see on my side, but I do want you to share your thoughts or your expertise. What are some of the impacts that you have seen in the rental market with COVID?
Yeah, well, for me, I was fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, to have one place that was right in the middle of freshly renovating and preparing it to be rented. It was, I think, yeah, we were looking to get a tenant for I think April 1st, and so it was, February, March. We were kind of doing some showings, and then COVID
Mm-hmm.
had kind of put into place, and it was tough at the time to know whether it was okay or safe to go to work because they had not quite released all the um, I guess all the types of work that were mandatory positions
Yeah.
or whatnot. So it slowed things down quite a bit, and I think what it really did was made us look, and think outside the box and think, well, how can I show my product and give it the best display without people seeing it in person.
Yeah.
And so things moved to, the virtual showings and virtual walkthroughs and things like that, which it really, once people kind of started accepting that that's how it was not a big deal. And it was quite a smooth transition that I found people were even immediately emailing, being like, hey, do you have a virtual walkthrough? I'd love to see more about this place, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable going in person.
Yeah.
So I found while COVID absolutely slowed things down at the time and may still slow things down today because there isn't those open houses happening, I think for the most part it was just a small adjustment that a lot of people had made. And so I guess I would definitely say it's taken more time to
Okay.
rent some places,
Mm-hmm.
but that's really getting kind of thrown out the door lately with technology, and it's
Yeah.
maybe even speeding things up these days. Now people can just do the virtual walkthrough very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of talked about it's more at the beginning of COVID, like say March, April,
Mhm.
when we were first, experiencing COVID, and then a lot of things were closing off, and then that's where maybe there was a bit of a more slowdown at the time. But now, as you said,
Definitely.
people are gonna get used to wear a mask, kind of adjusting the virtual internet, using technology. People are
Yeah.
moving into that kind of way of doing things, and then
Y-
so you would you say that the biggest impact would be just maybe a longer time to find tenants?
that would be it.
Yeah.
I noticed, in terms of there's definitely other things that COVID has impacted, but the biggest thing was just maybe just taking a little bit of extra time and not
Extra time.
necessarily that much all the time. So it hasn't been like I said, even nothing went vacant for me, which was
That's
pretty
great.
impressive. So
Yeah,
I think
that's
that
awesome.
it wasn't that bad, but I did also notice maybe just over the summertime, the market rent had dipped a little bit in some areas, but not so
Okay.
much in Guelph. Like
Okay.
it just seemed like there was some places where people were very concerned about the student market and
Yes.
the vacancies there and
Yes.
the uneasiness of students returning in
Yes.
September.
Mhm.
So I found that people were dropping their rent prices a little bit, trying to get people in, but they seem to have bounced back
Yeah.
already. And we know that students are still here, and
Yes.
a lot of international students are still calling Guelph home. So I think that really, in terms of pricing, there hasn't been anything that's been impacted.
Yeah. I think we hear the condo market in Toronto or the bigger Toronto area that we've seen a price decrease in the condo rental market in Guelph. Sorry, in Toronto. Or
Hmm.
surrounding Greater Toronto area, but I
Yeah,
felt like in the Guelph area, I haven't. We're going to talk about market rents in the next few slides, but like again, myself, I would agree with you that I haven't really found any decrease in rents.
yeah. Well, the thing with Toronto is there's so much more competition there, and
Yeah,
there's all the investors that have those specific condos to Airbnb,
that's
and
true.
where there was a huge issue where people were like just trying to
Yeah,
rent their Airbnb places for very little to cover their mortgage, and
that's
that's
true.
part of the impact out there.
Yeah,
But yeah, we don't see that as much in Guelph.
that's true. Yeah, that's a very great point. Awesome.
Yeah. And then, yeah, in terms of volume, I would say there's probably less volume out there. And I think the reason is there's a lot of people that may not qualify to move if they were thinking about it because either they've been off work due to COVID,
Mhm.
and now maybe they wouldn't qualify, maybe, say for a mortgage or something. So they're no longer making that move from renter to purchaser
Mhm.
because they're unable to qualify. So they're not moving. So yeah, I definitely noticed the volume of swapping rentals was decreased, and that can be a
Mm.
good thing or a bad thing because the good sign of that is that tenants are staying and they're happy where they are.
Mhm.
Or the bad thing is tenants are staying because they are unable to afford to move,
Yeah.
and maybe that current landlord is suffering those consequences.
Yeah.
So
That's a
it's
that's a
it's
good
hard to
point.
say
Yeah.
without doing a whole
Yeah.
survey.
That's true. Great. Okay, we're gonna move on to so just to summarize what we just talked about, I would say kind of going with what Jody said. Probably the biggest impact is give yourself a little longer time to find the right tenants.
Hmm. Definitely, and a quality tenant is worth
Yeah,
waiting for sure.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
speaking about the amount of time needs, so we talked about it with COVID, maybe a little longer time. Can you give us an idea of how much time should a landlord, if they are looking to rent a place, how much time should they start advertising, start screening tenants? How much time should you think would be reasonable to find tenants?
Absolutely. I mean, the unfortunate thing is most landlords get at best 60 days notice. So my answer to that would be as much time as possible because the unknown could happen. But I'm generally quite confident in 30 days is usually more than enough time to find a good tenant in Guelph. But
Yeah.
if you have that full 60 days, never hesitate, start your posting right away because
Mm-hmm.
I find that the ambitious tenants are the ones that are better tenants, and when they're looking
Yeah,
further out,
yeah,
then they're definitely they're doing their research, and that's the
yeah.
type of tenant that you want.
Yeah, it's funny because I did once get a person email back that I'm ready to move in ASAP. I'm like, that just gave me a bad signal when
It
they
can
say they need to
be,
move
yeah,
in ASAP. Then
yeah,
you start to
yeah.
wonder, like, like what's going on there, right?
Yeah, and you're not wrong. It would be 90% of the time. There's probably a reason why they need to move ASAP. So those red
Yeah,
flags
yeah, red
are
flags.
definitely
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah, absolutely.
just to summarize, about 60 as much time as you can. So if you're a landlord and you have you've received your notice from your tenant that they are moving out, so Jordy's suggestion would be start utilize that 60-day notice to start posting right away, and then that for the give yourself enough time to get quality tenants.
Yeah, the earlier the better, just to get those ambitious tenants that are looking right away.
Yeah, great idea. Now, speaking of, finding your own tenants, if a landlord want to do all this by themselves, obviously they can look into a property management like yourself, or even have a realtor help them to post their ads on MLS. That's an option that people might not be aware of. But if they
Yeah.
were doing a DIY, many people probably do as a DIY, especially
Hmm.
knowing that the rental market is so good in Guelph that people, landlords shouldn't have any trouble finding tenants. If they were
Absolutely.
to do them themselves and wanted to post ads on wherever, where would you suggest? What are some of the ways that they can look places where they can post their ads?
Yeah, absolutely. In Guelph, it used to be primarily Kijiji,
Yeah.
and for the University of Guelph to try to get the student market, it was the
Yeah.
Canon.ca,
Yeah.
and those were pretty much the only available
Yeah.
platforms. Viewit.ca, you have to pay for Viewit, and that one's an okay platform, but I find the most traffic and the highest quality traffic, I would say, is between Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace have
Facebook
been
Marketplace.
great. Yeah, yeah, surprisingly. And then the next kind of level below there, Rent Panda is
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
rentpanda.ca.
Yeah.
So I actually had a meeting yesterday with the owner of Rent Panda, and they're doing a whole new revamped system for landlords, and a whole new platform for advertising even better and connecting with social media. So they're going to make this really, really good platform, very user friendly. So I'm looking forward to that. He mentioned it's going to be sometime in February. So I would
That's great. Yeah.
suggest
I've heard
checking
about
that
Red
out.
Panda. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So just
And
to
as
kind of yeah, sorry, go ahead.
well, so I was just going to say, and as mentioned, that you said MLS is definitely a very good resource to use
Yeah.
when you're looking at kind of,
Hmm.
especially like a whole house rental, or
Yeah.
more like an executive style rental, because you get much more quality
Yeah.
tenants from MLS for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I did also find that if you're renting from MLS, not only that the quality of tenants will be higher because uh, tenants who look for a realtor to fund their rental, there's small
Mhm.
percentage of them, and then they are
Yeah.
already pre-screened by the realtor themselves. So
Yes.
I actually find the rental price tend to be a little higher.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
You agree?
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just to recap what we talked about. So Kijiji, which is everybody hears, I'm sure everybody heard about Kijiji.
Mhm.
Facebook Marketplace. Not everybody like in our community use Facebook. I do. I love it. Especially the
Mhm.
marketplace is where I shop my
Yeah.
kids stuff.
Oh, it's
So
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, so Guelph, Facebook Marketplace, I found is gaining its popularity.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the next probably very comparable to Kijiji.
Hmm.
You talked about the Canon.ca. That's more for student rentals. And
Yeah.
then the other revenue will be looking to Red Panda. It's another organization. We can kind of have them, if they're
Yeah.
interested, they can look into more about it.
Definitely. And also in terms of Facebook, there are various Guelph groups that are either
Yes,
dedicated to rentals or just dedicated to the Guelph community, and they're
yes,
great spots just to
yeah.
get some traction on a post as well.
That's great. Now, before we move on, I do have two questions here on the chat board. One of the question, how many rentals are singles and how many are family rentals? We will discuss about the type of people that we will see. So we're gonna
Mhm.
pause for that. So Eileen has a question about when we discuss about tenants who wants to move in ASAP, would that be a red flag? So she didn't get the whole part of that. So do you want to
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess for me, we find a tenant that is looking for a place, and if they're willing to just move in immediately as soon as possible, you definitely have to wonder what the reasons are that they're leaving their current circumstances so quickly. And when they say ASAP, I think that they know that there is a process to apply. You often need to go through the background checks and the credit checks. So it's definitely a red flag when someone is so eager to move in, and they may present you with half a year in advance. That can also be a red flag sometimes because they may never pay again. So the
Mm-hmm.
problem is getting kind of blinded by, oh, I have somebody immediately that wants to move in and they have some cash and this is great, which can happen often. So I think maybe taking a step back and saying, let's see who else wants to apply and what there is, and gives you the time to go through their application correctly and make sure you call their references
Mm-hmm.
and kind of put your mind at ease, because I'm always very reluctant to at least not very thoroughly screen somebody that wants to move in ASAP.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay. Well, I'm gonna again, the other question is about the type of rental, so we'll get onto that as
Mhm.
well. Um,
Yeah, what types of rentals, like in terms of like
yeah. So
from
again,
studio bachelor to.
yeah. So there's a question here about when you look at rentals, there are obviously different types of people that you will interact with as potential tenants. Do
Yes.
you see a lot of people that are family or renting, or do you see a lot of single people? That's one of so it kind of goes along the question I have here is that what type of people do you see as potential tenants? Like who are the people that
Yeah,
are looking to rent?
everyone. Guelph is such a unique market that it's all walks of lives. We have obviously, I would say, a very thick student population, to
Mm-hmm.
say the least,
Yeah.
and that can make up people from the local area all the way, across the world. A lot of international students. There's very heavy U of G international programs, which attract a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then in terms of families, always families looking to rent. You'll see friends that are often looking to kind of move out of their parents' place, and they're either in university or just kind of finished university and they just want to rent with some friends. um, yeah, like everybody, seniors. Right now, I'm working alongside another project, and we're getting a lot of downsizers going into the new build condos.
Mm-hmm.
People that are just looking to, sell off their homes, clear their mortgage if they have anything, and just rent and live
And
in
do
a
the most. Yeah.
easier building.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everybody, I can't even think of any type of person
Yeah,
I
I
haven't
agree.
interacted with.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen people who I have a recent tenant. She sold her house in Brenton. Her sons are here, kids are here, so she's moving to Guelph to rent first before she decides to purchase.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
have seniors looking to buy or not to rent, but to buy because they want to retire in Guelph, and then they have their kids, in Guelph. So though I feel like,
sure.
as kind of going along what you said, it could be a variety of different types, all walks of life.
Oh yeah, it's quite impressive. And then quite often you'll look at some of the applicants and you'll kind of say like, wow, these people are just, really, really good on paper. How come they're just looking to rent my,
Yeah.
condo for $1,600? Why aren't they buying something?
You know what? That's
And
exactly people have asked me about that. Why can't they not just buy?
but it's I think people just really like Guelph, and I don't know exactly why somebody wouldn't buy. I would buy every property in Guelph if I possibly could afford it.
I agree.
But I think that I mean, Guelph's a beautiful city, and the people that I see that are renting, in the downtown area and stuff, are people that are even commuting to Toronto because the pricing in Guelph is better, the living in Guelph is better, and the problem is they're stuck in their commitment job in Toronto. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, it's very impressive the wide demographic that you see in
right
Guelph
demographic.
from all over the
Yeah,
world. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I mean, you were talking also a little bit more about like the specific properties.
Yes.
It'd be hard for me to say if there was a bigger volume of one than the other,
Mm-hmm.
because Guelph has this very, unique setup where there's not very many big condos, but now they're kind of starting to come up.
Mm-hmm.
So that was forcing a lot of places to, turn into multi family
Yeah.
housing. So some of them are triplexes or
Yeah.
duplexes.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there's definitely a lot of multi-family residences. So, in terms of purchasing, there's very likely a large volume of houses that will have either, a top bottom split or side side split, which is really great to see.
Yeah, I actually seen a lot of those listings with basement. You talk about duplex, like basement
Yeah,
apartment.
duplex
Yeah, I've seen a lot of
income
those.
suites. Yeah,
Yes, there. And again, that's another topic I want to explore later seminars too. Is that the city is very supportive of that because it does provide additional living, for people. And then it's actually quite popular in Guelph. So city is very
yeah,
supportive to do for the
they are.
residents for
Yes,
that.
they are definitely. Yeah, they as long as you're doing the renovations and things by the
Yeah,
books, they
yeah,
process things very quickly, which is
that's
great.
right. Yeah, great. So the next question is about market rent for different type of properties. So you could help us to maybe give a range, if we were looking at condo. So like say, I know
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me, Esther, but I think my line cut for a second there.
oh, I heard you now.
Okay,
You're good.
could you repeat what you had just said, please?
Oh, so, I was talking about share with us the market rent for different type of properties. So let's say first, if you look at condo market, what would be
Mhm.
a market rent for, let's say, a two-bedroom condo? Um, like what
Sure.
would be a
Yeah,
market rent?
definitely I can get into that. I mean, it will obviously vary
Yeah.
in location in Guelph,
Yes.
because you could probably find, I would say, like, one of the older condos downtown Guelph, you could expect to see rent somewhere in the 16 to 1800 range, maybe for a two
Mm-hmm.
bedroom. Where in the south end you could expect to see upwards of $2,400, possibly more depending on what it is, because I know that Tricar is building those new
Yeah.
condominiums, and I expect those rents to be upwards of $2,500 for a two
Wow.
bedroom for sure.
Yeah.
And then townhouses, I actually have a couple townhouses that I'm renting right now.
Yeah.
I rented one out just like right in the midst of COVID as well. This
Yeah.
was for May,
Yeah.
and it's a three bedroom with a finished basement, and the rent there is 2,500 plus utilities for
Plus
that
utilities.
townhome.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to add
Yeah.
on to that too,
Um,
I have a client just purchased a townhome in Guelph in the South End. He just rented for 2,500. Exactly rent you're talking about.
yeah.
Obviously, it's a three-bedroom with finished basement. I find if there's no basement finished,
Yes.
I find the rent tends to be maybe $200. Would you say for a basement finish or not?
Yeah. Maybe about a couple $100 difference or so, but it depends because the ones that I have also have the extra bathroom down there, which I
Mm.
think helps
Add,
quite a bit. But
that's right. Yeah.
it adds a lot of value having that
Yes.
extra space for sure.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and funny enough, I have almost an identical townhouse that has been rented to the same tenants for I think 4 years now,
Yeah.
and it is 1,900 plus utilities.
Oh, yeah, because
So it shows you the
you're
difference in the
restricted.
last 4 years.
Yeah, you're restricted to the amount of rent you can increase, and then there is going to be a rent freeze next
Yeah,
year.
we did increase the rent once, but they've been really good, so we've kind
Yeah,
of held off.
yeah, yeah.
And
I hear
they're
you.
still really good,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
all good.
I hear you. So, would you
But
say, in terms of townhouse, the market, the purchase price for a townhome can vary quite a bit between a freehold
mhm,
or a townhome that has a condo fee. Would you say, is there any
yes.
rent difference if someone buys a freehold townhouse versus a townhome that has a condo fee? Would you say there's any difference in terms of rent if they're identical, features?
Well, I think that there would be still a slight difference because on a freehold townhome, they don't have like, and this is an assumption of mine, but they don't have like the whole organized care of the lawn and everything. Is that correct?
Usually, from my own experience, is that the tenants tend to take care of all that stuff.
The tenants, yeah. So where I have the one townhouse that it does have condo fees, and they just
Yeah.
have a maintenance company kind of take care of the
Yes,
lawn and everything.
that's right.
So I
Yeah.
feel like we are able to ask for a little bit higher rent
Higher
having
rent.
that type
Okay.
of service done. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So a little higher rent for a condo townhouse that was a condo fee if they're
Yeah,
if they're
just
situated
a
close to
little,
each
but I
other.
don't think that there would be a very big
Yeah.
difference, like maybe $100, and then
Yeah.
that $100 difference could get wiped out depending on what area of town you're in,
Yeah.
east versus the south or something.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
So,
what about detached homes? Let's say if a townhome has a very similar feature than a detached home, what do you see the difference in terms of rent?
I don't see a huge difference, but definitely, a few $100 difference because when you're looking at the townhouse versus detached in Guelph, we still have a reasonable amount of distance between houses.
Mm-hmm.
So I find you get absolutely a lot more yard space, more
Yeah.
privacy in a
Yeah.
detached house. The thing is they're becoming fewer and far between on the new builds with the detached
Mm-hmm.
houses. They seem to
Yeah.
be building way more townhouses,
That's right.
and yeah, so they're harder to come by. But I think that they're an awesome purchase, and especially if somebody has that ability to find one that isn't renovated yet in the basement, and they have the
Yeah.
ability to put in that renovation and add the value of another income
Yeah.
suite.
That
That's
I
the only
think
way I'll
that
buy a
yeah.
house.
Yeah, I think that actually increased the rent value substantially.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, substantially.
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, speaking of
Yeah.
basement apartment, my next question would be, what would be the market rent for a basement apartment? Let's say a one bedroom, legal base. And we're talking about legal accessory basement apartment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, legal basement apartment. If it's, I would say like if you're not going to include utilities or anything, with a parking space, I've seen them anywhere between like on the low end, usually 1,200 these days plus
Yeah.
utilities, and then upwards depending on what it's like. It can be anywhere 1,600, 1,700 for a one bedroom basement apartment.
Wow.
It's pretty wild how high they've been going
I
lately.
know. Yeah. And I guess the two bedroom would be slightly higher than a one bedroom.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So just up the street from me on Elmira, I'm by the Costco in the West End, and there
Yeah.
was a two bedroom that just got rented for it was 1,850 plus utilities.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's nice. It's 9 foot ceilings. It's a nice basement apartment.
Yeah, I've recently helped a client rent a one bedroom plus a dance. It's a little bigger uh,
Hmm.
basement apartment. I think it shares, laundry, everything is that's on its own in the
Hmm.
South End for 1350 plus utilities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think
It's the going rate.
yeah, I think as the house price goes up, here goes the the rent too because they have to match,
Yeah,
and then it has to make
that's
sense
right.
for a new landlord to buy property to rent if they can't have it covered by
Yeah,
the rent.
yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a math equation, and depending on what your investment is and what the purchase price of the house is, and if
Hmm.
you can rent it for that much, then it makes sense,
Yeah,
definitely.
awesome.
Yeah, we're lucky in Guelph, I find, because people are pretty receptive to the higher prices, and I mean, it's a pretty good community, and it attracts a lot of out of town people with money as well that are
Yeah,
willing to pay these rates. So it's
yeah.
good.
Now then, the last question I have in my agenda is that is there any rent differences? So we talked about, rent kind of varies, depends on the location. So that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm asking about here is that a lot of the people in our community, in our Chinese community in Guelph, that do have a strong preference for the South End. And when you see the rental market, do you see that difference as is being reflected in the rental market?
Yeah, I definitely do. And It's funny too, because it has obviously some to do with development, but it is also preference in a way, and everybody seems to be gravitating towards the south end, and it does have the greater, I would say, like tenant pool.
Okay.
It does attract better tenants as well, and
Okay.
people are willing to pay a lot more out there for sure.
Yeah.
So in terms of like number one, I think south end of Guelph is absolutely the biggest buy and the best buy. And then the east end is starting to kind of really come
Oh, picked
together a
up.
little bit better.
Yes. This year it was reflected in the real estate market too, the East End.
Oh man, I don't like, I
Yeah.
didn't really get to see the stats that well, but I'm telling
Yeah.
you, the East End, like they've just been slowly chugging along, and they've
Yeah.
really developed well. And I think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful community out there, and I'm
Yeah.
excited for them to get more stores out there too.
I
It's a
agree.
great,
I agree.
great
If there's
area.
a more grocery store there, maybe Loblaw would finally put their grocery store there.
Oh man, they need it. They need it.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of, that's what I expected. Kind of see is that because the South End, real estate market has been very, it's doing much better than the other areas. So,
Very strong.
because of the location, commuters, easy access to 401, that might also add to that too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. But
yeah.
the
So
East End is
yeah,
also kind of close to that 401 access too, and not everybody knows that, but
I know.
some people do, and that's another reason why it's a great spot.
Yeah, awesome. Now I do want to share a little bit about some graphs here. So I'm going to actually switch to Chinese. It might be easier for my audience.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah，这个图我想跟大家分享的是，刚刚我们分享了，就是在桂湖的不同的区域，可能租金有些差异。那 Judy 也有提到，就是说南区呢，可能吸引更多的这个租房子的人，它的地理位置和它的这个独特性啊。那我想跟各位分享的是一份报告，就是提到桂湖的这个房市，5月到8月的是过去的这个5月到8月的数据呢，显示它的这个 growth 就是它的这个增值的潜力。那如果我们看 South End 的话，确实房价要比别的区要高一些，然后它的增值呢是在15.5%。那下一个呢就是 East End 13.4%，然后再就是Downtown 和 North 和 West 就是差不多在7到9左右。所以从这个增值的潜力来看的话呢，南区的话呢也确实有比较大的增值的潜力。那我们看一下不同的房型。那如果看一下独立房的话呢，它的这个平均价值也要高很多了，但是它的这个增值也是比较高的。那再下来就是 semi detached， 然后再是 townhouse， 然后再是 condo apartment， 就是这个就是从这个购买的价钱上来看的话。那我们刚刚有提到，如果说是把这个 detached house 给它转化成2个单元的地下室可以出租的，那这样的话呢，会大大提高这个房子的这个租金。那这个图片呢，是把每一个 neighborhood， 就是我们 Guelph 的这个房的，从地产局这边的话呢，会把这个整个 Guelph 的区域呢分成18个区域。那么每个区域呢，它有一个对比，就是它每年的这个增值。那我们看到在 Guelph 的话，南区的话呢，是这个 Coral East 和 Clearfield、Coral Hills、Pine Ridge、West Minneswood。这些呢，还有这个Village by Arboretum， 这前面这5个呢都是属于南区。那你也可以看到这些数字都偏高一些，跟刚刚我们讲的也是相吻合的。所以不管是从出租角度来看，还是从租金的这个角度来看的话，南区还是很多投资人的首选。So, Jordi, I just kind of discussed about the 3 graphs that we have here, talking about the market, in terms of resale, the real estate market, kind of going along with what we're seeing in the rental market. There's maybe a stronger preference for the South End, and then, as you said, a bigger pool for the South End location.
Definitely.
So this is actually all the slides, questions I have personally prepared, but let's now open to the audience and see if, I'm sure many of them have questions in terms of what we discussed, and then we'll see what they have to say.
Sounds good.
Yeah. 那现在呢是答问的时间，如果您有什么问题想问的话呢，可以打开你的麦克风，或者是使用这个 chat 的功能，可以把你的问题打出来，也可以是中文的，然后我可以翻译都没有问题。
I have 2 questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jordi, first one is about like right now the house pricing is very high. And is it still worth like to start this business? Because will be if you borrow lots of money, can keep a balance, or is not a good time to start this business?
Very good question.
That is a very good question. I think that now is a very good time to start this business, but I think that it would be the most important thing to do the math on your purchase. And it's not too hard to get a very strong idea of what the rental rate could be for a property that you're looking to invest in. And as long as your numbers match up, I don't think that there's any reason why you shouldn't get into the rental market for Guelph, because there is not enough houses out there right now that are being rented at an affordable rate for some people. And this is definitely something that would reflect the purchase price. Now, I know that people do consider the purchase price right now high, but it's the norm, and it's normal everywhere. And I think people are understanding that, and people are still willing to pay the purchase and the rental prices lately.
I totally agree what you said, Jordi. I think the number has to make sense, and then for someone to do a mortgage on to make sure that they are balanced each month with the cash flow study.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, Jordi, you are the property management. I'm not too sure that means this job you like manage the property for other people, or you purchase business and then you have a company and do all those management? So
I am the full-time on-site acting landlord primarily for most of my clients. So the way that I position myself is as the full-time property manager and acting landlord. And so I'm always kind of first on call for tenants. I do, everything from obviously looking at any issues that tenants may have to serving notices on behalf of the landlord. The only thing that I cannot do is represent a landlord in court should there be any type of landlord-tenant board hearing. I'm unable to represent individual clients. But other than that, my job is 100% assuring that investment properties are cared for and looked after, and that the rent is paid on time, and that the tenants are happy and the landlords are happy. So I'm kind of the happy medium.
Sorry, so you help other, like the landlord, if they don't want to do this renting or dealing with tenant, and you help them to dealing with, and then you
Correct.
a commission, something like that?
That's right. Yeah. I work on a commission basis, and then if I'm managing the property, it's a monthly management fee, and then if there's any additional work, depending on what needs to be done, if it's above and beyond just checking in on the house and doing regular inspections and furnace filter changes, things like that, then there's just added labor depending on what it would be, or I will contract out a trade if it needs to be done by a trades professional like a plumber or someone.
So you have a company like doing this?
Yes, correct.
And you yourself also have several property, like you are also a landlord?
I'm a landlord as well for my own properties, yes.
Just work yourself, or your company, like you hire other people to work with for you?
No, I do it. It's all me.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's right.
Any other people have any questions? 还有其他人有什么问题吗？你也可以使用那个打字的那个 chat 的那个 function， 或者是可以打开麦克风。I'm actually quite surprised how quiet people are today.
If nobody talk, I'll ask more, like maybe.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
But for a starter, should like apartment be because the value increase is low compared with a detached house. Like starter is a good idea to get an apartment or a detached house?
That's a
And
very good question.
not have lots of savings, borrow lots of money. If detached,
Right.
maybe can't keep a balance.
Right, I understand. So you're thinking, is it better to start out small on maybe like a 1-bedroom condo rather than investing in, say, a 5-bedroom house? That's, I guess, kind of all up to you in terms of what you view as personal risk versus your reward. Because for me, I don't think that there's going to be a big difference in trying to rent out a 1-bedroom condo versus trying to rent out a 5-bedroom family house. I think both will rent easily. But if you're uncomfortable taking on a mortgage of, say, $800,000, $900,000 versus $400,000, $500,000, then start small by all means. And I think you'll find quite quickly that Guelph will grow on you and will easily grow your portfolio. So if you want to start with a 1-bedroom condo and you're comfortable doing that for a 5-year mortgage, you could look at it after 2 or 3 years and say, hey, this has been consistently good. Maybe it's time to remortgage and you can use some equity to purchase another one. I don't think that there's any wrong starting point. I think what your comfort level is definitely where you should start.
Yeah, I just add on to that too, Jordi, is that not only comfort level, but also like what's your purchasing power, like what's your financing power. If your mortgage only allows you to buy, say, a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment versus a detached home, then I would say invest in an apartment would be a very good starting point. And also how experienced you are as a landlord. So if you are a starter, maybe a condo or a townhome with condo fee might help you take away some stress. So, and I think so the years of experience as a landlord also plays a big role, but for a starter, maybe it depends on your risk level, your purchasing power.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you're looking, as you said, to do it on your own, if this is something that you've never done before and you're looking to be a landlord, maybe managing 1 or 2 people in a condo is easier than a family.
Yeah, and there's less hassle, right? There's less, there's no yard to maintain, there's no garage, there's less space to have to manage. So we do have a few questions in the chat room. I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up. So one of the questions is, what is your management fee in general?
Yeah, absolutely. My management fee generally, without looking at a property or taking into account if it's residential or anything, is 10% of 1 month's rent. So it would just depend on what the property is like. And that fee would cover me being on call 24 hours a day, emergency service. It would also have me, acting on behalf of the landlord for any issues that the tenants have. So it's kind of, sometimes it's worth it for the landlord, depending on the tenants. And, sometimes you have really good tenants. You don't necessarily need somebody to babysit them and take care of the issues constantly. So I do find I'll be a bit of a segue for many first-time investors. They work with me for a year or two, and I help them learn about the business, and I don't mind helping them and transition into managing their own property on their own. And it's happened to quite a few investors, and I'm happy to see them do it, which is really good.
Now, just going along with that as well, I want to add a question there, is that when you deal with landlords, investors, do you see a lot of local investors or people out of town?
Definitely both. Definitely both. I would say right now, my portfolio is probably 50-50. I have people from BC,
BC,
Nova Scotia, lots of investors from all over.
Really, that really surprised me, from BC and Nova Scotia.
Yeah. Well, the gentleman from Nova Scotia, I think that he purchased this place originally and then moved to Nova Scotia.
Oh, okay.
He had it managed under, I think it was MF Properties, and had a very bad experience. And so I was able to help him sort things out with his tenants. And he's been an awesome client of mine for 6 years. And I don't think he's ever coming back.
That's wow.
How can people find you? Do you put an ad like for your business, or how people to know you?
Yeah, so I advertise on Google Ads, so as well, like just from any type of Google search. If you were to search, say, Guelph rentals, my company website will come up in a search. Or I post my properties on Kijiji, as well as any of the other marketing platforms. Social media posts on Instagram and Facebook as well. So it's mostly marketing. I have a background in internet marketing. I went to
Oh, wow.
Conestoga College for business marketing. So I have a pretty extensive knowledge on
That
getting
comes
the
really
word out there on the
handy.
internet. Yeah,
That comes
yeah,
very handy.
yeah. My
Thank you,
last
thank
job
you.
was a chief marketing officer at a local company here called Pub Labs, and it's really helped me accelerate getting the word out there for my
That's
business here,
great.
which is great.
Yeah. Now the question here is that
Thank you.
if you have encountered difficulty with trouble tenants who is unwilling to move out and unable to pay the rent, how do you deal with the situation?
Yeah,
Get into the
I just
details
have to
here.
go. Yeah, that's a great one. Sure. It's basically you just have to go about the process that the Landlord Tenant Board and the Residential Tenancy Act set out for us. And unfortunately, right now, with the way things have gone, tenants have taken advantage of the situation. So the way that I've dealt with it, and I do have a couple tenants that I have had to give notices to, but I just serve them the notices as we have been, and they have been working on it and trying to pay their rent. So I haven't encountered anybody specifically that is just not willing to work with me or not willing to try to come to some sort of an agreement on payment terms. So I've been lucky that way. But the only thing that you can really do is play by the rules and try to make sure that you're on them all the time, because you have to make sure to remind them that rent is due, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
just serving proper notices is the only way to go about it.
proper notice.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and doing your due diligence beforehand and really making sure to collect the right documents. And even if somebody seems very friendly and great, things can happen in the future. You never know. So
yeah,
making sure that you get their
yeah.
identification, all that stuff is very important for the
I
future.
think it is mentioned. I think that speaks about how important it is to pre-screen your tenants prior to the move in.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
So
Absolutely.
Eileen's question is where to go. Eileen, can you elaborate what do you mean by where to go to get what?
Oh,
Yeah,
like
I just missed out that part. You said that's probably the only thing where we have to do. Yeah, I just didn't get the solution you provided.
Oh, okay, so I misunderstood the question, but the way I interpreted the question was like, how do people find my company or
No, sorry, no.
find the
I think
rentals?
No, no, when you,
Eileen's question is going to talk about tenants who are unwilling to pay rent.
Okay.
Yeah, Eileen, I think he mentioned just to what I understood was that to go by the landlord and tenant board to serve proper notice to them. If they're not paying rent, you have to give them notice and then to give them proper form, and it might be actually be going to the court. Does that answer your question, Eileen? You have lost her there. Anyways, while we wait for her, I have a question for you, Jordi. In the beginning, you mentioned about how the Guelph market is different from Kitchener-Waterloo, where you worked, or Toronto. What are some of the, like, I know a lot of our community people here, they might have kids to go to Waterloo, and it's actually very common for them to purchase a condo there. And then while the kids go to school there, the kids stay at the condo, and then they rent the rest of the rooms to he or her classmates or friends. And
Right.
so it's been actually really popular investing in Waterloo for the kids when they go to school there. So what would
Definitely.
you say in a nutshell? What would you say what's different, because Kitchener-Waterloo is so close to us? What do you see as a main difference in terms of the Guelph market compared to Kitchener-Waterloo?
Well, in terms of if you were to just look at, for example, the student market, I wouldn't say there is a large difference. I think there's probably a greater population in Kitchener-Waterloo for the student market, given the two schools there.
Yeah.
But pricing wise, I think they're both pretty comparable. Guelph may actually even be a little less expensive.
Really?
depending on the market rents. But it's been a little while since I've really done much renting in Kitchener-Waterloo. But I think the main differences that I found, I think would be outside of the student market, would be more looking at like the family housing. Kitchener is a little more affordable, and I do
Mm-hmm.
find that some of the applicants aren't quite as dependable as some of the ones in Guelph, depending on how you're looking at it for like job stability and things like that. But that's just my personal experience. I mean, there could be people out there that have never seen that.
Great. Okay. So I think overall, overall it kind of confirms what we discussed today is that the rental market in Guelph is quite good.
Very much so.
Yeah, and then also the growth. Guelph was ranked the top 4 or 5 real estate market in Canada actually recently.
Yeah, that's right. I
Yeah,
think
the
Business
growth.
Insider had even named Guelph one of the number one
Yes,
at one point.
for real estate investment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Very
it's
impressive.
great, so it's great to have experts, in this area to kind of confirm what we're seeing in the news, just to confirm like what we see is really kind of goes along what we see, out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can confirm. Very good
Yeah,
market here.
yeah. 其他人还有别的问题要问吗？
Sorry, another thing, is it like a prefer to rent to student more safe to collect the rent, or like a family or somebody unemployed, to can't afford to pay the rent?
Sure. That's a very common question with investors. I think it can go either way. You can have incredible students that will care for your property and that have great parents that will back them up, and there's never an issue. But you could also have students that don't have that same relationship and don't behave the way that other students would and that you'd hope they would. And you could, possibly run the risk of them not paying rent or damaging the home. And then the same thing can go for families where you get, a great family that cares for the house as if it were their own. And then there's some families that just don't. So I would say there really isn't much of a difference in Guelph. You definitely get great students, and you definitely get students that need to get their priorities straight.
Yeah.
And the same thing with families. And sometimes it
Yeah.
can be a great family down on their luck, and that happens too. So
Yeah.
it'd be hard for me to say which one would be a safer bet.
Yeah, and also add on to that is also depends on the property location. So if you
Yeah.
were to buy a property on, like say on Scottsdale or on Cole Road on Admiral, if there's larger population of students, then your target
Yes.
might likely be students. And then to
Yeah.
do a proper, showings and getting like probably female students are preferred, not to be biased. But again,
usually.
usually. So I think it really depends on the location of the property. And then that's number one, and also the layout of property, whether it's more suitable for family or for students. So in terms of cash flow, likely you will get more higher rent for students, usually, not always. But if you're looking at a 5-bedroom or 6-bedroom home, for student rental, you're collecting rent per month per bedroom. Your rent is likely going to be higher than a single family rental. But obviously, managing a student rental requires more energy from the landlord, because you might be getting text messages from every student, so definitely very different revenue, I would say. And it really depends on the landlord themselves, which route they would like to go to.
That's true.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
thank you.
I agree
Yeah.
with
Is
that.
there a limit, like how many students per house allowed?
That's a very
Yes.
good question. So in Guelph, if you're looking at 2 units, so I'm talking about 2 units. So an upper unit and a basement unit, if it has to be a legal accessory apartment, the city allows for 6 students maximum.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, if it's beyond that, they consider it a legal lodging house, and those needs special permits and can only be within certain distances of other ones. And
but you know
so,
what,
yeah,
rules are actually changing too. So I'm not sure the name of this person who asked, but if you want to discuss with me further, we can talk about this afterwards. The rules are a little changing. I did talk to the city, so it's not as straight as, it's not a black white 6 max. So rules are changing a little bit for student rental.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyways,
Thank you.
so the next question is, do you maintain a pay 1 month and deposit 3 months policy for rent? I'm not quite sure. Do you understand? Jordi?
We legally cannot do that. Unfortunately, in Ontario, the only deposit that we are allowed to collect is last month's rent and a key deposit.
Is
Aside
what
from
the-
that,
okay.
damage deposit, security deposit, pet deposits are not legal.
Yes, yeah.
But if a tenant wants to offer several months in advance, a landlord is allowed to accept it, but the landlord cannot suggest it. So you're allowed to accept several months in advance. And many tenants do offer that in lieu of poor credit or whatever it may be. And sometimes that can be absolutely fine. I've had a gentleman who his job was based in Germany, so his credit was really difficult to kind of get a number. And so he just paid 6 months in advance, but he showed his invoicing and he was able to afford with no issues. So it wasn't a problem or a red flag, which was nice.
That's great. So the other question I have, there was a recent announcement on how, I can't remember the name of the organization that allows a landlord to be part of the credit bureau. If a tenant has bad payment history, the landlord can do something to their credit score. Do you know much about that?
I would have to look into that. I'm not sure if it's a separate company from, because TransUnion is essentially like the credit score keepers. So maybe there's a company. I know there's a lot of property management companies, or I guess kind of tenant screening or background check companies that have been popping up quite a bit recently. Yeah. So no, I didn't hear about that, but that sounds quite interesting.
I will share that with you. There's been some other news about tenants can actually build their record, build their credit score by paying rent on time.
Oh, well, that's good. I think that's important.
Yeah.
It's a good incentive on both sides, right? That earns credit for the tenants and then the landlords hopefully get their pay.
Yes, exactly. Any other questions? We are about we're a little bit over 9 o'clock, but we could probably maybe take a few more questions.
Yeah, sure.
其他人还有什么问题吗？
因为我有一个问题，不是关于那个房子，是关于房屋维修的问题啊。我昨天晚上不是我们那边清理了下水道之后，那个热水器放出来的水全是咸的和绿的，这个你能请教他一下吗？
什么热水器放出来什么？
就昨天晚上不是清理了我们那带的下水道吗？因为就水管线，现在我把水是把它总关了之后，现在打开之后，热水器里面的热水出来的就是变了颜色，变成绿色，然后又是很咸，现在。
我觉得
很多人都这样。
我可以问他，但是我这个应该更多是 city。
他是因为他管理的嘛。
So his question was there was some what's the word? They were cleaning the water maintenance, and then afterwards they noticed the water coming out of the pipe was green and very salty.
Not just water heat, hot water.
So is that something they should contact the city about? Do you have any experience with that?
It was the hot water tank that was leaking?
Not leaking. It's just the water that came out from the hot water tap.
Oh, okay.
The water turned green and salty.
Very salty.
If you can't use the cold tap on the same faucet, was it normal?
Yeah, the cold water was normal, but only the hot water side.
Do you have a water softener?
I have.
You do have a softener. I wouldn't say you would call the city for that. That would likely be that's probably something internal, because the city's water comes all just one line.
Yeah.
And then it's separated to your hot water tank, and then probably to your water softener first, then to your hot water tank. At my house, we have the salt or the softener connected to the whole thing, so cold and hot would come out the same. But it sounds like it's either your softener or your hot water tank could have some sort of buildup inside, and maybe it's coming out strange.
Okay, thanks.
There's probably a way to bypass the softener. Yeah, there should be something on the back that you can turn and it bypasses so it doesn't go through the brine.
Yeah,
I would
try that.
test that out first. And if
Okay.
that does, if it's still coming out the strange color, you should also have on your lines just after the water meter, something that where you can either drain them or connect a hose. Grab a bucket and test it out there, because that would be the freshest water from the city.
Okay. Yeah. Thank
That'd
you.
be my guess. Yeah, no problem. And if all that fails, call a plumber.
Call a plumber.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much today.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Oh, and
See
if the hot water tank is a rental, I would call them first, because they'll come and check that out for free pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I use tankless. Yeah.
Tankless. Oh, okay. And I'm assuming it's not a rental.
No,
So
tankless
maybe
can be
I'll
rental
try.
too.
Yeah, try one more.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we take one last question before we end our section tonight? 我们最后就因为已经9:08分了，我们再有时间，如果还有人要问最后一个问题的话，我们就请Jordi 来帮我们回答，然后我们就结束今天晚上的讲座。I guess. Anyone has any questions? One last question? I guess no.
That's all right.
Yeah, well, I want to again thank you again, Jordi, for joining me tonight. It's been very informative, and I've learned a lot myself, and then confirmed some of my own observation. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. 谢谢各位今天晚上参与。在这边稍微自我介绍一下，很多人可能都知道，我是一名地产经纪，在 Guelph。然后呢，我也有自己的微信群，如果各位有感兴趣，想在地产方面的咨询的话，也可以欢迎您加我的微信，然后我可以把您邀请到我的群里面，可以有更多的互动。Yes, so again, I guess we'll just end our session tonight, and thanks again, everyone.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.